I do believe that the deemed disposal must go, because I fundamentally believe it's unfair to tax somebody on an unrealised gain. The deemed disposal tax on unrealised gains for ETFs is simply madness. We often speak in this House about opportunity, about fairness, and about giving people a real stake in our economy. But we need to ask ourselves honestly, what kind of Ireland are we shaping through our current tax system? Do we want an Ireland where ordinary workers can build wealth slowly and steadily over time, where someone on an average income of 100 or 200 euros that they can put into a savings account a month can participate in the markets and benefit from long-term growth? Or are we content with a system where real tax efficiency is saved for the few who can afford complex advice and sophisticated structures? Because at the moment, when it comes to ETF investing, that is the signal we are sending. If a young person decides to invest modest savings into a diversified fund and hold it for the long term, they can be taxed on gains they have not even realised. They haven't sold, they haven't received income, they may not have even seen a cent in their account, yet they face a tax charge simply because time has passed. That cuts across a basic principle that we have in this country, and that is that we tax income or gains when they are actually realised. It also undermines compounding, and compounding is how ordinary people build security. It is how small, consistent investments over 20 or 30 years turn into something meaningful: a deposit, a cushion, a sense of independence. And it's vital to say, Minister, my understanding is that approximately 66 million euros a year is raised from the deemed disposal tax. And the reality is, I actually think the government is leaving a lot of money on the table by not allowing people to compound over time and actually tax the gain when people are ready to realise it. Taxing an unrealised gain is an unfair principle, and as we all know, the markets can go any way, any day, and nobody knows the better. But the reality is the people who are patient and wait for the long term are rewarded. If we're serious about broadening ownership, about spreading opportunity, about building long-term capital in this country, then we cannot penalise patience and discipline. And we have to remember that we are in a global competition when it comes to capital markets and, with opportunities that are there at the moment. And it's important to highlight as well that young people primarily, they see the benefits of investing in a pension from a tax efficiency perspective. But the problem is not everybody wants to wait until they're 66 years old to draw down money or to avail of the money that they have accumulated. They want to be able to live life as and when they need to. And they never know when a crisis or an opportunity might arise that they need to access their money. And I think people want to have that freedom to be able to do so. A fairer system would reward long-term investment as opposed to penalising it, and it would treat people consistently and give every worker a genuine chance to accumulate. It is time to reform this rule and build an Ireland where ownership is not concentrated in the hands of a few, but shared more widely across society.
Thank you, Cahir, and can I thank Deputy Dolan for raising the important issue of supporting savings and investments. And can I start by saying that I fully agree with everything that you have said. We do need to look at areas where we can incentivise wider participation in retail investment and to activate that 170-odd billion euro that's sitting idly on demand deposits in this country. According to the Central Bank of Ireland's Retail Investor Participation Report, published in December of last year, Ireland has one of the lowest levels of direct retail participation in the capital markets in the EU. Encouraging retail investment is set out in the programme for government, and it is consistent with the work at an EU level on the Savings and Investment Union. Ireland will be taking a leadership role in this regard during our presidency of the EU Council later this year. The deemed disposal rule is part of the current taxation regime for investments in Irish domiciled investment funds, life assurance products, as well as equivalent offshore funds and certain foreign life assurance products, and generally applies to ETFs, as Deputy Dolan has said. Under deemed disposal, tax is levied 8 years after an investment is made, and every subsequent 8 years, regardless of whether or not a disposal has in fact occurred. The tax is levied on any gain in the value of the investment from the date of acquisition to the date of the deemed disposal. On the ultimate disposal of the investment, any tax paid is allowed as a credit against the final tax liability. Surprisingly, I must admit that as it stands now, we don't have a full, clear picture of exactly how much deemed disposal generates annually in tax, and that's something that we're going to have to ask Revenue to figure out and come back with the precise details. However, I do believe we need to start thinking about the cost of not doing something and the opportunity missed out on not doing it. You know, more favourable tax drives economic activity. Prior to Budget 2026, I advocated strongly to our then Minister for Finance, Minister Donoghue, that deemed disposal be removed in its entirety and that we reduce the associated tax rate to be in line with our capital gains tax. Except it was easy for me to say, as I wasn't framing the budget, and a Minister for Finance has competing demands, but to his credit he did signal elements of the Funds Review recommendations to be actioned. Budget 2026, in addition to reducing the rate of tax that applies to these forms of investment, included a commitment to publish a roadmap for the taxation of retail investments as included in the Funds Review. The roadmap will set out an approach to simplify and adapt the tax framework to further support retail investment while applying necessary and important anti-avoidance protection in a proportionate manner, and it is expected to be published shortly. There was also a commitment in Budget 2026 to launch a forum looking specifically at a savings and investment account product. That forum will kick off later in March and will be convened by both the Taoiseach and I. Later this week, I'll be convening a round table with senior industry leaders to discuss Ireland for Finance strategy,